FREENBECKY, the unbreakable thread between two hearts. Some connections announce themselves loudly. Others arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day you realize they have always been there, holding everything together. The story of Freen and Becky is not the kind you understand all at once. It unfolds slowly, through moments that don't beg for attention but refuse to be forgotten. It is a story built not on dramatic declarations, but on consistency, on presence, on a bond so steady that even the loudest noise of the world could not pull it apart. Long before the internet named them, long before fans began to watch every glance and decode every silence, there was simply two people, learning how to exist in the same space. When two paths quietly aligned. Their first meeting was ordinary in every way that matters on paper. Set, script, shared project. Nothing about it screamed destiny. And yet, something shifted the moment their eyes met. It wasn't attraction in the obvious sense. It wasn't instant romance. It was recognition. The kind that doesn't rush but settles. Freen noticed how easily Becky laughed, how her presence softened a room without effort. Becky noticed how calm she felt around Freen, how silence didn't feel awkward, it felt safe. They spoke easily, naturally, as if continuing a conversation that had already begun somewhere else, long before this moment. Neither of them named it. They didn't have to. The thread begins to weave. As days turned into weeks, their connection deepened in ways that felt effortless. They learned each other's rhythms. When one spoke, the other listened, not to respond but to understand. When one grew tired, the other noticed before words were needed. It was in the small things. Freen always walking on the side closest to the crowd. Becky instinctively turning toward Freen in unfamiliar spaces. Shared glances that carried entire conversations. These moments were not performed. They weren't for cameras. They existed even when no one was watching, especially then. And slowly, an invisible thread began to form. When the world started to feel it too, fans were the first to notice. Not because Freen and Becky were loud about anything, but because authenticity has a texture people recognize. There was something about them that didn't feel rehearsed. Something that resisted being labeled as just chemistry. People began to say, they feel different. They look at each other like home. This doesn't feel temporary. Clips circulated. Interviews replayed. Still, nothing dramatic ever happened. And that was exactly what made it compelling. Because what people were seeing wasn't spectacle. It was stability, pressure, noise, and choosing each other. As attention grew, so did scrutiny. Questions followed them everywhere. Sometimes gentle, sometimes invasive. The world wanted clarity, confirmation, definitions. It wanted answers that could be summarized and shared. But Freen and Becky chose something else. They chose discretion. Not out of fear but out of care. They learned how to stand beside each other without feeding the noise. How to remain connected without turning their bond into public property. How to protect something fragile by not exposing it to unnecessary hands. In doing so, the thread between them tightened. Not in restriction but in strength. Love without performance. What made their connection extraordinary was how unremarkable it looked at first glance. No grand gestures. No dramatic confessions. No carefully staged moments. Just presence. Freen showing up. Consistently, quietly. Becky trusting, deeply, instinctively. They didn't need to announce love to prove it existed. Their actions spoke with a steadiness that performance never could. In a world obsessed with declarations, they chose devotion through behavior. The silent yes. There was a moment, small, almost invisible, that changed everything. Was a glance. A subtle nod exchanged in a crowded space. Most people would have missed it. But those who understood connection recognized it instantly. That moment wasn't meant for the world. It wasn't a signal or a confirmation or an answer to speculation. It was agreement. I'm here. I understand. I'm with you. No sound was needed. The internet would later call it many things. A hint, a clue, a confirmation. But in truth, it was something simpler and far more intimate. It was a choice. Why the thread never broke. Rumors came and went. Stories rose and faded. Attention shifted elsewhere, as it always does. But Freen and Becky remained unchanged. Their closeness didn't waver. Their care didn't diminish. Their connection didn't dissolve when interest cooled. That is how people knew. Real bonds do not depend on observation. They survive when the spotlight moves on. And theirs did. What they gave the world without trying. Without intending to, Freen and Becky became a mirror for many. They showed that love does not need urgency to be real. That connection doesn't need explanation to be valid. That choosing someone quietly can be more powerful than announcing it loudly. For some, they represented hope. For others, comfort. For many, proof that intimacy can exist without spectacle. They didn't change how we see love by redefining it. They changed it by living it differently. The unbreakable thread. Today, no one can say exactly what Freen and Becky are to each other. And perhaps that is the point. Some bonds resist definition not because they are unclear, but because they are complete without it. The thread between them was never fragile. It was never temporary. It was woven slowly, strengthened by trust, protected by silence, and held together by mutual choice. Unbreakable not because it was tested, but because it was never abandoned, but still ongoing. Their story does not end with answers. It ends with understanding. That some connections do not need to be named to be real. That some love stories are written in glances, not vows. That some threads, once formed, hold two hearts together no matter how far the world tries to pull them apart. And that is why, long after the noise fades, people will still remember Freen and Becky. Not as a rumor, not as a mystery,